Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Max with BuzzTox here, and I'm back with a brand new Westworld Season 4 Episode 3 breakdown video where I go through this episode in its entirety and do a deep dive on any Easter eggs, potential theories, and give predictions based on what I think is to come. Now with this episode, what I will say is I think there's a lot less to deep dive into since it was a lot of action and spectacle, capitalizing on things that have been set up in previous episodes. But first, let's start off with Bernard. We get to finally see him in the Valley Beyond, and we get to see what the Valley Beyond represents. In a conversation with Akecheta, we learn that the Valley Beyond, or the Sublime, is basically every world imaginable, where the hosts get to live in the worlds of their choosing. And the reason why there are so many worlds, seemingly infinite amount of worlds, is because every year in the real world, a millennia passes in the Valley Beyond. But in this conversation with Akecheta, we learn even more about Bernard. That Bernard could have chosen any world, but yet he subscribes to the world of his past. He keeps reliving his own loops. We see that he's in Arnold's home, holding the maze, and his son Charlie ends up taking it from him. To me, this is symbolic of Bernard's development as a character. In Season 2, he achieved consciousness. He reached the center of his own maze, and then he scrambled his memory. Charlie was given to him as a cornerstone memory, based off of Arnold. And no matter what Bernard does, he keeps falling back to the thought of his son, stuck on what his core drive is and what his cornerstone memory is, without the freedom to change it. Charlie stealing the maze from Bernard is clear symbolism that for Bernard to finally reach the center of his maze, he must learn to let go of Charlie. And as long as he keeps chasing Charlie, he will never truly re-find the center of his own maze. But then in complete reverse to that, Akecheta offers Bernard a gift, the future. Basically, all the worlds that they have are simulations on every single possibility that could happen on Earth. And he tells Bernard to do it quickly, because all the paths seem to end in destruction. And Bernard must intervene if the Earth has any chance of survival. So in that time, in the Sublime, Bernard essentially sees every single possibility that will result in human extinction, but he will also see the scenarios where humanity and the world can live on. And we get to see flashes of some of the things that he saw. And in these flashes throughout the season, we're going to see check marks, where Bernard is looking to achieve each thing that he saw, to ensure and to validate that humanity will be saved. First, we see the house that Bernard wakes up in. We see people in a sandstorm. We've met these people in the desert. I'm sure this is going to be a scene later in the show. We see controls and a tunnel, which I think is related to this dam that William tried to purchase the land for. And this dam, I believe, is producing energy that stores the data of all of humanity. We get to see shots of inside the tower where Charlotte is overseeing, potentially, the park that she built where Delores is inside. We also see the complete destruction of the Golden Age world. The world that was opened by William last episode seems to be old and decayed as time has passed. And to me, this shot almost but confirms that Maeve and Caleb are in the present and Bernard is now in the future. Or if you want to put it another way, Bernard is in the future and Caleb and Maeve are in the past, 7 years after the riots. But Bernard makes it very clear that he does see a path, but in every scenario, Bernard dies. So it seems like Bernard's character arc is now etched in stone. And that's where Bernard chooses essentially to die, to risk his life to save humanity, when he leaves the Valley Beyond. But in action, we get to see how these scenarios really work. We have Stubbs make a joke about a snow globe, and him just saying that removed half of all the possibilities that Bernard studied. Another thing I noticed when they got in the vehicle to leave, that this is an old internal combustion engine vehicle. In all the cities that we see, they seem to be driving electric vehicles. So I don't know if this is a stylistic choice by the show, or this is really trying to communicate that Bernard and Stubbs are from the past and are now entering this new world that Delores or Christina participates in. But then Bernard makes it to the diner and we see that he has a fixation on the symbol of the maze. And I feel like this show might be diving into a new symbolism of what the maze represents. In Season 1, the maze was simple. It was the center of one's consciousness as a host. A host travels through the maze of their own mind, and when they reach the center, they finally found themselves. However, William mistakenly thought the maze was a game that was meant to be played and solved by him. On William's journey, we learn of a character named Wyatt, who discovered the center of the maze and built a house on it and blocked off the center and basically watched everybody and kept the center for himself. And this is clearly reminiscent of Charlotte and the Tower, where Charlotte is in the tower at the center of the maze and she is using the fly, the larva, to control the humans, and she's using the code of the hosts to ensure that nobody reaches the center of the maze but her. Almost turning the symbol of the maze into a freedom symbol. That the center of the maze is your own self and not some big corporate conglomerate. So we see clearly Bernard is on the ball because he is trying to activate certain things in this world to ensure that it follows a certain path. It's all about the woman spilling the coffee, him going outside and killing those two men before they infiltrate this organization. It's about him drawing the maze so he can show it to this woman, who is now apparently the key to saving the world. So there's a lot to catch up on in this world, but what we can gather is it seems like humankind is kind of on the downtrend, where this woman now has a secret organization of humans to try and hide from hosts, and these two hosts are trying to infiltrate their secret group. So clearly the problem has gotten pretty dire, but Bernard used his skill of knowing what would happen and he convinced her to take her to the desert where they're looking for something that Bernard knows where it is. So Bernard now made some new friends, and it seems like this new friend that he made could potentially be Caleb's daughter. The timeline completely adds up. If you think about it, it seems like Bernard is maybe 20, 30 years in the future. That works out perfectly to the age of this woman, and I don't think it's happenstance that she looks very similar to Caleb's daughter, as well as has many of the skills that they seem to be beating over our heads with Caleb's daughter, that she is a survivor, that she takes after her father, that she is overall paranoid and more of a fighter. So I think it will definitely be confirmed that this is Caleb's daughter. And I think as the story unfolds with Caleb, we'll realize his importance and how his importance fell on his daughter's shoulders. But let's get into Maeve and Caleb. We see Maeve and Caleb enter the Golden Age Park. And obviously we get a lot of Easter eggs, seeing the repeated storylines but change to fit this new Golden Age era. A big thing I noticed is usually these kids in Westworld put a scorpion on an old man, whereas here they don't. The man is just covered in flies, beating us over the head with the idea of the fly controlling humankind. And throughout this whole shot inside of this Golden Age Park, we see a ton of flies, really insinuating that maybe not all of the people in this park are humans. But I think a substantial amount of people that you think are hosts are actually humans. And I think we could definitely see a plot twist where people are casually killing hosts, thinking that they're just hosts, but they are not. They are humans. And we see a lot of new characters taking the roles of ones that we know. We see Maeve being reinterpreted by another woman. We see Clementine hit on Caleb the exact same way that Clementine hit on William. There are a lot of parallels between the William and Caleb character. I think the key difference here is Clementine told William not much of a rind on you, meaning that he was very new to this experience and he eventually got jaded and became the man he is. This version of Clementine doesn't say that. I think it insinuates that Caleb is a war-torn person who's lived through a lot of life. So there are many rinds on Caleb. But they basically end up killing them all and sneaking into the facility, which we later learn is in itself a part of the park. It's based on Delores' uprising, which I think is a pretty baller move as a company. To take one of your biggest scandals ever as a company and turn it into a PR game. I thought that was pretty genius. And to me, honestly, it was a twist that I was not expecting. The key thing that I drew from this scene is a lot of the hosts were shot and killed, and Maeve was shot and injured. However, Caleb was shot multiple times and was not injured because the guns do not work on humans. So that is one element that I want to point out that could degrade my theory that humans are being controlled and put into the park. But when they escape Delores' uprising, Caleb heals Maeve, and we get some of the backstory. Caleb tells Maeve that you've saved my life before, I'm returning the favor, really adding to that history of these characters that we do not know. And as I've said before, the timeline does not add up. 7 years ago there was an uprising, and 7 years ago Caleb had his daughter. So essentially, if we're going to listen to what the showrunners are telling us, is that at the end of season 3, the moment everything went to shit, Caleb went, met a woman, fell in love, and had a daughter all in a span of a week. And also in that week, conceive and birth his child. So it just doesn't work. But then we get to the secret facility, and we learn more about the fly. We see these drone hosts holding larvae. And this larva, essentially, I believe, is planted in the brain, basically spawns a parasite, and that parasite ends up doing something to the brain to alter how humans operate, and it gives some form of control. It's almost like a disease that they're passing on to biological flies. The black goo is being dispensed into a chamber with these flies, basically making them diseased. But for some reason, the people who have the fly are now prone to sounds, which is what the homeless person was saying to Christina. The tower, can you hear it? And it's clear in this scene that that sound dictates and controls what these humans are doing. And you can only hear the sound if you have been implanted with that parasite. In this scene, Caleb does not hear the sound, but Maeve can. Another thing I found interesting is these humans that were playing with blocks and then took the gun up to shoot themselves, they were emotional as they did so. So they are emotionally aware of what is happening, but they cannot control their bodies. And that is what I believe we're going to see with Caleb next episode. We're going to see the emotion of his character doing things that he does not want to do, but he has no control over it. One part about this episode that I found very interesting was Caleb got psyched out by Charlotte with a host version of his daughter. And his daughter tells him that Hale just needed you. So clearly, Caleb is important for some reason. Off the top of my head, he is an outlier. He is somebody who can change his fundamental drives. He is somebody that Rehoboam had a deep eye on. So far, what the show has presented us is that is Caleb's core value to Charlotte. Is the fact that he's essentially a human version of someone who's broken their own maze. But as I said, if Hale just needs Caleb, then why do we get this whole plot showing Caleb's family and Frankie trying to escape this bodyguard? If Caleb's daughter wasn't so important, then why didn't Charlotte just have her host kill them? Why try and kidnap them? So that's something I don't necessarily understand yet. But from a storytelling perspective, I think they showed Frankie in this episode because they are building the origin story of this woman who is with Bernard. But that is my breakdown for this episode. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Tell me your theories, tell me your thoughts and your ideas. But until next time, I'll see you guys later.